UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Ecker, MUFON State Director for New York Chris DePerno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP Crossfire.
Well, welcome to the greatest audience on the planet and all those listeners at KGR Radio. This is Crossfire UAP. I am joined with Chris DePerno, Martin, Don Ecker. We are the Crossfire team. Interesting grouping, no doubt. And hopefully you enjoyed our first installment of the show. We try to rotate who has the con. I lost the toss. I drew the short stick. And I apologize to all the folks here. Things are happening in the background at the time of this recording. And we do hope to put this show as a live show in the not too distant future. But because of various world events and because of various things that are going on around each one of our individual lives, aside from what we do with Crossfire UAP and KGRA and the various shows, we have the opportunity from time to time to get together. I am pressed against some travel that's coming up for the next couple of weeks. And as I was saying in the background, we have the world situation of the expanded conflict that we are seeing with Israel and the Hamas group. So we have a lot happening there in the background. Offline, talking with Martin and some interesting things that came up. And I'm going to jump to that as the opening today because I want to kind of get it out of the way because the show is not about world current events. We know that. But world current events do have direct impacts in what's going to happen with UFOs. One of the things that I've always watching this, and I have noted that during the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, I haven't seen many reports that have covered this, but we seem to have an increase, a uptick in UFO reporting around military conflicts. There is what you will get from periphery viewers to what is happening on that, as well as, especially in this day and age, individual people that are involved, soldiers and civilians that are involved in conflict will make reports. And that's because many people now have the ability to make almost instant recordings, video recordings of what they see going on. Iraq and Afghanistan are no exception. And I know from my personal experience in Iraq, many, many things were talked about. Now, I think the vast majority of those things are really attributed to advanced technology or other activities that are going on that are military tech. I think it always alludes to the fact that it might be reverse engineered. We've talked about that as a group and individually many times in the past. But I think it's going to be interesting if anything to this extends, because this part of the world of Israel and the Gaza Strip area is steeped in long time history with lots of references back to the UAP phenomena in very, very different forms. So I'm going to take it around the table. I'm going to start, which is my upper left, eye detective, Chris DePerno, longtime KGRA veteran. What say you, sir?
I'm ready. I'm ready there, Commander. What's the question?
The question is, what do you think?
What's the question?
Or do you think there's going to be anything that's going to spill into the UFO world? Now, obviously, This takes attention away from what's going on in the States. I think some people would even allude to saying that this is sometimes why these things happen.
Well, we've always had a history of UFOs watching our wars, our conflicts, our police actions, and everything else that we've done over time. Go back to World War II, the Foo Fighters have been there. We've seen them now following our battle groups in peacetime or when they get sent to different areas of the globe. So why should this be any different? I'm waiting for the first ufology reports to come out that sightings have happened over Gaza and stuff, because I think if they are, whether it's our advanced technology doing it to scope it out or UFOs, and I think it's both, they're going to be curious to see how we're going to deal with this conflict. Are we going to wipe ourselves off the face of the map, which I got to tell you, it doesn't look good for us. And or are we going to do something that's absolutely complete opposite and try to find a better solution? I will tell you that after 1,000 people have been murdered, butchered, and everything else, there's going to be huge conflict. And I think they're interested to see how we handle these conflicts. And that's it.
There's a lot of really cool things you touch upon in that. Martin Willis of Martin Willis UFO, excuse me, sir. Another KGR veteran, longtime leader in the process of discovery and documentation, especially within the KGRA family. What say you, sir?
Well, it's a couple things. I'm going to go way out there a little bit here first of all, because I think it's kind of relevant in a type of way. I was listening to Jack Wiener's interview with Alejandro Rojas back in 2016 or 17, I think it was, and from the Allagash incident up in Maine, a really well-known case for those who are not familiar with it that may be listening. Check it out. A lot of information online. Anyway, he basically talks about in a late encounter with Charles Fultz. Chuck Fultz came up to visit him. He has this encounter, and he talks about, now I know that I'm telling you this is way out there. He talks about having this encounter with a being, and the being is telling him about the galaxy. And this was information we didn't know at the time, that we were a barred galaxy. And that ended up being so. Later on, they found that information out. Anyway, he documented it back then, the whole situation. The bottom line is they said they were from a part of the galaxy, and they showed where in particular, and that they were of a very high intelligence, and their ascension through intelligence came through one thing, and that's, here it goes, unconditional love. I know it's so bizarre, but he said that's how they all ascended, through unconditional love. And I started thinking,
I don't think we got that gene, Martin.
I don't think we do either, because all we do is fight this conflict. I mean, there's been over 300,000 wars, I think, recorded, I do believe, since the beginning of time. Anyway, that certainly would solve all those problems, but I don't think that's going to ever happen anytime soon. But I do have something to add that I think is very interesting when it comes to conflicts and UFOs. And I've said it a few times on my show, and I don't believe any of you know about it, or a lot of the listeners maybe not. But back in the 1990s, I was getting a life insurance policy for one of my ex-wives. Sorry about that. And I had the real estate, the insurance broker, and I got into a conversation. He was hanging out afterwards, and maybe we had a couple of drinks. I don't remember. Had the fire going or whatever, and talking about this and that, and he started talking about being in Vietnam, and then he said, "Yeah, I was in kind of a special situation in Vietnam." And I'm not even paying attention to UFOs in the 90s. Keep that in mind. So he said, I was in a special part of the Air Force that researched what was going on with UFOs at the time. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, when there was napalming and bombing, he said these things would show up, and we were, my job was to investigate. It's all, classified stuff. I can't get into, details. And he says, and by the way, they're very interested in our nukes as well. And I said, this was fascinating to me, even though I wasn't paying attention, as I said, to the topic. So when he was getting ready to leave, saying goodbyes and all that. And I said, hey, by the way, what does the government think that they want with us? And then he just looked at me and he says, we're a petri dish. I thought that was really fascinating. I'll never forget that. That's all I've got to say.
Well, Two really cool parts to that. I agree with unconditional love. I had when we say that, we use that word. Obviously, many people think of a romantic love. They don't quite grasp the what you're implying with the term. And in difference to Chris, obviously we are slow to evolve to that state. To put it mildly,
I don't think we read that chapter, Commander.
It really, I mean, it's touched upon in almost all the best and most loved of our sci-fi stories. What is written. Unconditional love. It's usually the thing that causes a successful outcome, and it was brought into many shows. And the petri dish part alludes to me, and I think it really fits with a lot of things that what I consider real UFOologists, real investigators, point to. You have different conflicting groups within possible ET races that have different levels of engagement with us. Some that are going to have almost this, do no harm, do no interference. To others that are going to step in and try to prevent cataclysm. And there's a lot of more than just inconsequential discussion and evidence, in my opinion, that has been discussed over the decades upon decades that supports those kinds of stances. All right. With great patience in the small drum roll, Dark Matters expert Don Ecker, actually known as Decker. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining a little bit early to accommodate Commander Cobra's ridiculous schedule. How are you, sir? And good day.
Well, thank you, Commander, and Martin, Chris. As always, it's a great pleasure to be here. I listened to everything you gentlemen have said with a great deal of interest. My take on this has not changed much. For you gentlemen that have read the document that I just recently wrote, will give you a lot of background information on where I come from. First, I believe that the human race, our race, Homo sapiens sapien, have been closely monitored since we've been here. Monitored by who? Well, by those entities that have been here, in my opinion, since the beginning of time. Now, it's rather amusing to me. I remember from my time in Vietnam, a couple of incidents that happened were reported at the time widely in the news. There were, in fact, many UFO incursions during that war. I think that whomever those entities are, they've been watching wars that humans have been waging with each other with a great deal of interest. And as time has evolved, especially in the last 11,600 years, give or take, since the Younger Dryas event, which was a world-changing event that happened that reshaped the planet and probably brought us to where we are. They've been vastly interested in how we human beings operate. Now, with that being said, this recent conflict that just began, I got to tell you, I am deeply, deeply disturbed by that. My father, during the end of the Second World War, was one of the troops that liberated the concentration camp at Dachau. He very seldom would mention anything about that. And of course, as a kid growing up, before I went into the military, I was deeply fascinated by that, but it was one of those things that most World War II vets would not discuss at that time. But the horrors he saw, I know, deeply affected him, probably until the day he died. Now, with that being said, those people that survived, that ended up going to what is now the Israeli state, the land of Israel, those people were traumatized by these events during the Second World War. We cannot even begin to comprehend. They are a race of people that have been persecuted, have been massacred, have been murdered. Well, in most of human history that we are aware of. Now, that's a tiny country. They are currently fighting for their very lives. We've seen the atrocities that began this conflict, a systematic, intentional attempt to murder civilians. They know that they have no choice but to become as junkyard dog mean as they can possibly do it. And I think current events are showing that they've taken that lesson to heart. But there's one thing that I find potentially horrifying. Israel, it's a common open secret, have nuclear weapons. And if they are pushed back against the wall, especially as this conflict grows, may be tempted to use them. Now, the one actor in this drama that everybody knows about and have made no secret of their desire to annihilate these people is the nation state of Iran. And I've got to be thinking to myself, these people obviously must not be thinking with the same type of brain that I am. If push came to shove, I do not think it would be beyond the pale for the Israelis to contemplate hitting Iran with nuclear weapons. Now, we know from our own history, we know that these entities, these beings behind the UFO UAP technology have in the past interfered with human nuclear weapons. For whatever reason, I think they are loath to even consider the idea that these weapons be used in actual warfare. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And I got to tell you, there's one other facet to this that we as Americans must take into account. For the last 2.5 years, under the current administration, our southern borders have been wide open. Several millions have flooded into this country with no check whatsoever. God only knows what has entered this country. And I am deeply concerned. I live in the Los Angeles area. We have a very large Jewish population here. We have a very large Arabic population here, Palestinians, the entire spectrum. And I tremble at the idea that this conflict will break out in this country. Hey, look, 22 years ago, we had the 9/11 atrocities happen. And most people, believe it or not, I find it hard to believe, have put this in the back of their mind. Well, I'm here to tell you, it may revisit us in a very horrible way. So we have to be utmost vigilant about that. and do what we can do in order to alleviate this problem now. But I do not have high hopes, gentlemen, with our current administration being effective in this situation. And that's basically
They throw a
where
great
I'm at.
barbecue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here we jump back into it. There's a lot there, Decker. I agree with a great deal of what you said. But there's one thing I really want to zero in on. And Martin, I'm sending this in your direction, so get prepared as I work it into your direction. I'm one of those folks that believes the much storied Roswell event is not of an extraterrestrial matter. But I do think that it's interesting that the events surrounding Roswell that specifically talk about UAP, UFO activity at neighboring bases in that area, which are some of the first recorded ones that have really expanded, that lead up to what Decker was talking about, the UFO activity over missile silos that shut them down, other things, all the way into fairly recent time when there was a number of reports of people saying that something intercepted things that were in flight in the Pacific. Where, with your recent experience, firsthand, in the in our nation's capital during the hearings for what was going on, two-part question. You've done a lot of recent research on that. Do you think this will be these events that we're discussed today and what's been leading up to this will push to the sidelines further disclosure, further discussion? That's part one. And part two, I know that you have talked about, I mean, you and I both have ties here to Maine. There is an interesting event that occurred up at Loring many years back, a former nuclear base. Exeter has interesting ties to the then Pease, which was a key Strategic Air Command when Strategic Air Command existed. And we have lots of events around this. Two-part question. First, what do you think is going to happen to disclosure? And it's going to go to you, other gentlemen, as well. And what do you think about our continuing activity around nukes, and ultimately what Decker was talking about, us flirting with major disaster? What happens?
Well, this hopefully the show will. Hopefully, Don is wrong about them using it. He's not saying, he's saying they could use it. Hopefully, they will never use it, so we can actually air the show. That would be good. But I don't. I mean, that is such a big step, and I think once that step has been taken, we'll never go back from that. So I'm really, really hoping that we refrain from any nuclear weapons in the future.
Only interrupting you just a tiny bit. This ties into your unconditional love. And I know this sounds crazy to people as I'm probably putting this out, but I think I will get nods from the rest of you on this. There is no question how horrible this situation is. The same thing with Ukraine. That is going to require very distasteful, very horrible things to happen to ever try to get this into a stable situation. There's just no easy way to put any of that together. People have it, when you say the unconditional love part of it, it's much like the situations that family face when you have to make a very difficult decision on how you're going to fix or stabilize a crisis within a family. And the family of man on this planet, man, we are definitely not in good shape on this. So it's an interesting part that you brought up earlier at the start of the show that I think it's there. I think that there's a strong possibility you'll see it happen. But the specter of what it is, if it happens, is incredibly horrible to me to contemplate what comes next. And you're correct. If we cross that Rubicon, I have no idea how you ever will get any kind of stability back.
That's right. And who else will get involved? And, I mean, that's the area they always talk about, either World War III or the end of the world, beginning in. And, I mean, I just hope we don't see that. I sometimes feel like I don't even want to watch the news. I mean, the world is just so hard to take, and what we do to each other and all that. And the whole situation, Don was mentioning, we have a worldwide issue with all these people trying to get, it's all over Europe, it's all over everywhere, all these people migrating out of, because of the hostilities or whatever it is, even drought or whatever it is. There's a whole mass that I don't know how we're going to deal with. We're not going to be shown anything by any extraterrestrial or whatever it is, I don't think, on how to handle that. And as far as the first question you asked, I mean, it's awful hard to tell what will happen. These are fires that need to be at least tended to. So I think there will definitely be some, this will be on the back burner, the UAP topic. I do believe, when any type of crisis like this comes up, I don't think there was any intentions for that to happen. I think it just organically happened. I mean, I don't know, but anyway, I don't know how much I really have to add to all this. I would like to think that that they could interfere and would interfere, or would they let us just have at it? They didn't stop Hiroshima and Nagasaki from happening. I don't know. Maybe they weren't aware that we could even do it at that time. I know they showed up in the modern ufology after that. So anyway, I don't know what I can really add to that, but that's all I got for right now.
Chris, from your lofty position in the great Northern Tiers.
Yeah, it's pretty lofty, Commander.
Do you think that those that pull the levers in our government, U.S. government, on information and specifically access to the UAP, do you think that they've played the card that says, well, we have provided hearings, we have paraded witnesses, we have talked about it, we've said we really, what we know and what we don't know. And the events of the world now are, overcoming this. And here's why, I'm not trying to be intentionally provocative as I say this, but I've watched key officials over the weekend, while all this is going on, tell me that climate change is still the biggest issue that's pressing. What I would think, what Martin and what Decker were just talking about, the possibility of the nuclear genie getting loose here, that's going to affect the climate. I think that one's kind of got our attention, but we're talking that climate change, and you're saying that totally to disrespect of what that statement provides to me. And just the absolute stupidity that you're talking to the American audience on. I have a feeling that we've played all the cards we're going to play for quite a while about UAPs from a disclosure in the government, because now we're going to say we're overrun with because obviously this situation that we're facing is going to hurt us economically. Chris.
First of all, I got to tell you that two things. I will tell you that disclosure, I think, is right down the crapper, because I mean, there's no way that Congress or anybody going to hold hearings about UAPs with the mess the Congress has right now. We got to look at what's going on within our own government first. We don't have a Speaker of the House. We don't have anything. So as far as disclosure goes, I look at it that Congress has got to get their act together and start dealing with the problem that we have in the world. The second thing,
that's going to happen real soon.
I hope so. I'm not putting any money on that one, but I will tell you that also I believe in what Don Ecker's paper. I read Don Ecker's paper, and I go, I don't think I think there's something more frightening going on. And I think the world events, along with UAP study, is part of it. Now, if you look at Don's paper, and what he's saying is there could be a faction of good and bad extraterrestrials and everything else going on. And if you look at the history of ufology within happening with abductions and everything else, we can pretty much say there's a lot of aliens that are not into us. They could care less if we blew ourselves to smithereens. Now, Martin said something that I think is absolutely right on the money. We're a petri dish. They don't give a rat's ass about us, because if they really did, and saying to us, look, you're just an experiment, and we're looking at you, and you don't have that love gene that Martin said, and there's nothing that I can disagree with what Martin said, as far as, yeah, we don't have that unconditional love. We're not bred that way. The human race is bred to have conflict and war. We've been taught that from these people are good, that people are bad. We don't get along with them, so we destroy them. And
we haven't really had a really good reception for a number of people that have popped up over the years that have had the unconditional love as a message.
Yeah, I think we kind of destroyed
really done real well by that. And I can think of 4 or 5 names historically represented. So, yep.
So here's the other frightening thing. How many abductees have said, I have now, after my abduction, I've had dreams of nuclear war. I've had dreams of nuclear war, devastation, the planet being devastated by fire and everything else of nuclear war. And I'm telling you, there's people that want to push that button. There are people say, we need to wipe these people out off the face of the earth. They're holding signs up saying, gas all the Jews. Down in New York City, they're holding signs saying, gas all the Jews. Now, if I was an alien, put yourself in an alien spot, and I saw that, I'd be locking the doors to the spaceship saying, these people are crazy. I mean, we are not a planet ready. We're too primitive. We are not a planet ready for disclosure. We are not a planet ready to have these people come down, because the first thing we would do, just like in that movie, The Earth Stood Still, the first thing we're going to do is shoot one of them. We want to put one over our mantle on the fireplace, saying, hey, I got an alien up here. Take a look at this. Hell, we're shooting at each other right now, thinking that some people were aliens. What's the first thing they did? They thought their neighbor was an alien. They went out with a shotgun and tried to shoot him. So I agree that there's bad aliens, there's good aliens, there's a conflict going on in the universe. And I think the whole universe has conflicts all over. That's my
well said, sir. A lot there. Mr. Decker, I'm going to turn to you. Your paper we've alluded to. I'm sure many people, when they see the show, are going to want to know about the paper. So I hope that publication, how it becomes available, will be revealed, if not during our show, at some time in the near future. I found it excellent. I'm going to end up reading it a number of times. I've read other works that you have sent me in the past. I really enjoy your writing style. The good, bad alien, when I say good or bad, I'm not assigning it to them as races. I'm assigning it to their affinity to the Homo sapiens of our planet, I think is an interesting part. I also think it plays very well if you look into storied science fiction writers who were more into the philosophy end of it, that much of what occurs or has gone on in this good, bad fits into the religious tenets that you find in the Christian Judeo Bible, in the Islamic texts, where they talk about these interventions. One of the things that we're dealing with, and I'm interested in your thoughts, you mentioned the nation state of Iran. They believe, at least publicly what they're saying, if properly provoked, these events will bring upon the cataclysm of the return of God in the last days to basically, in their case, justify their position and their religious beliefs. what do you think? How do you match up what you talk about in the paper to what is going on, not just with this most recent conflict, but over the millennia of conflict? How do you see that? Do you think it's influenced what we have put down as our religious dogmas, mythologies?
Before I even go there, there's something else I've got to address. All right. I heard from a friend of mine in the wee hours this morning. He lives back in Virginia, military veteran. Okay, somebody that exudes a whole lot of patriotism, especially from his military service. He had two people attempt to break into his home last night. And the reason I mention that is because if we take a look today, currently, at American society, civilization is breaking down all around us. Okay? The lawlessness that is, and I'm speaking from the standpoint of being a former police officer, okay, and criminal investigator. Our society right now is, gentlemen, I hate to say it, but by God, it's true. We're on the verge of dissolving. When we go after the police, defunding them, defanging them, prosecuting them for carrying out their sworn duties like we're doing today. And some of the prosecutors around the United States today that are not fulfilling their obligations or their oaths of keeping criminals off the street. My God, they're emptying the jails, putting these people back on the street. More predators preying upon society. It's happening everywhere. Here in Los Angeles, my God, we've got one of the worst public prosecutors imaginable. It's truly, I mean, I heard this 50 years ago, but a revolving door of justice, people being arrested, taken in, being released without bond, with their word, by God, will appear in court, and they're back out on the street, in some cases the same day, carrying out more crimes. Now, when that happens, people become fearful. There's nothing more terrifying than a fearful mob, okay? And Chris DiPerno, as a former New York police officer, knows exactly what I'm talking about. You have a genuine recipe for disaster. Then, on the world stage, you have these current state actors carrying out atrocities worldwide. Hey, we know why this Hamas incursion happened. Israel and Saudi Arabia were on the verge of trying to normalize relations. It looked very good. Now, something a lot of people may not be aware of, the Islamic faith has actually two major factions. They have the Sunnis, they have the
Shias. Shias.
Iran is a Shia nation. Saudi Arabia is a Sunni nation. Now, basically, I'm not going to get into the fine details, but it's basically a divide between how they believe in the Quran and the original prophet Muhammad. Okay, it's a family thing with Muhammad.
It's from the descendancy of Abraham. Which son is the recognized one that goes forward? But go ahead, you're correct.
Yes. So at any rate, you have these state actors launching these atrocities. Now, what we haven't addressed so far in this broadcast today are several other nation state actors. The Chinese communists. with their designs upon the island of Taiwan. North Korea, who is still firing missiles into the Sea of Japan, okay, letting everybody know that, by golly, it wouldn't take much to launch us. We saw what happened in 1950 in Korea, okay, when North Korea, with the help of the former Soviet Union, were encouraged to invade South Korea to turn the whole mess into a communist nation state. And we got involved in a 3-year war. My old man got called back to serve in that conflict. And I got to say, my mother was not too happy about that. So, with all of this percolating, okay, the final unknown card, the Joker, if you will, all right, are the UFO, UAP, for the want of a better term, aliens. What is it that they would desire to see? And if you go there, you got to ask yourself, which faction? Because it's my belief, okay, in my research for, well, over 35 years, that there is more than one faction who have no regard whatsoever for the human race, and another faction that kind of, well, if not friendly toward us, at least apparently benign. Now, if push comes to shove, all right, and somebody gets antsy with their nukes, and it's not, absolutely not unforeseeable that this could happen. The bottom line is, what will we as a people do? Well, for my part, 35, 40 years ago, I would have been ready to go back out, put on a uniform again, and do my part. But I'm a little old and long in the tooth for that these days. So the bottom line is, America right now, our country, where we live, the land we should love if we don't, we're in a precarious place because the recent generations have shown no affinity to join the military. Our military today, in my opinion, is in a sorry, sad state, more concerned with what pronouns we use and whether somebody that is a quote unquote transgender should be allowed to serve instead of war fighting. What's the military basically for? Okay, it's going to sound harsh, but it's the truth. The military is there to do two things: kill people and break things. That's what the military is designed to do. With the long-range term of bringing the conflict to a halt, all right? And we're not ready to do that. So if something were to happen within the United States today, a 9/11 type thing that we experienced 22 years ago, a 9/11 event, but a mass 9/11 event, not only in New York or Chicago or San Francisco or Los Angeles or Dallas, but if that were to happen all at once, oh my God, we gentlemen would be in a very, very sorry, sad state of affairs.
Commander, can I jump in for a second?
Of course you can, Chris.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to comment on what Martin said, that he said that they didn't, the aliens didn't do anything when we used an atomic bomb in Japan. And he's correct. And I will tell you, in my heart, I firmly believe that we are going to have a nuclear war. Somebody is going to take that step, because this conflict is going to escalate. It's not going to de-escalate. Just simply by, if you're watching this stuff, it's going to end that way. And I kind of believe now that we are heading right down that road of total destruction, which makes me kind of, strengthen that, because if you believe in abductions and if you believe that stuff has been implanted in abductees, one of the major things is, as I said before, is their dreams and their insights that of total nuclear destruction. Now, I will say what Don says. I don't care. I don't think they care. I don't think they care if we nuke ourselves off this planet. They 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 don't give a damn because they can either take over the planet because they've been here for thousands of years. So if we're a species that is an experiment and they think we've gone wrong, they can turn around. Remember, if there's a lot of species in the galaxy, maybe they have to answer to somebody. Maybe they got to say, "Hey guys, this experiment we did, or what's going on down here, they ain't working well. So let them just eradicate themselves, and we could start over or do something." Because there's been many civilizations here on this planet. I mean, if you look at it, and if we believe the theories that we're being taught or preach, as Don said, there's probably been several civilizations here. And have they eradicated themselves? Have they destroyed themselves? Just like we're on the verge of doing. And once we turn that key, there's no stopping it. There's no going back. And they I don't think they want to be involved with the turmoil that we're going to cause here very shortly.
Very well said. Well, gentlemen, we're at the hard break. Let's throw to the break, and when we come back, I'm going to pick it up with Martin. I have a kind of a looping question for him on what we've been talking up to this point. This is Crossfire UAP on KGR Radio, and I am the this week's sort of kind of host, Commander Cobra. Be right back. Welcome back to Crossfire UAP. Commander Cobra here, this week's leading host of my esteemed colleagues, Chris DePerno, Martin Willis, Don Ecker. All our veterans of the KGRA pantheon of great hosts, and it's a privilege for me to be sitting with them once again for this show. Now, you'll hear at the end of this probably a little bit of a discussion why I'm calling it Crossfire UAP, where officially the banner is going to be UAP Crossfire. And I'm going to let Martin handle that towards the end of the show and give me the correction on air. But here's where I want to start off with Mr. Martin Willis. Give me your take, because you've been deep dive on this for a long time. Do we have, or is the situation kind of aligning with, we have benevolent extraterrestrial races that may be visiting us. We have malevolent, where there's many names that have applied over the years. Are they active players in what we're seeing going on in the world, or are they patiently waiting for the outcome or hopeful? And what I'm saying is, something that Don brought up is that we're seeing a derision of our worldwide of cultural kinds of norms. It seems to be happening. And there isn't really a part of the world that it's not occurring at. Mass migration, legal or illegal, however you want to view that, is not the issue that I want to drive at, but there is a factor that's going on because people desire a certain level of security or comfort or whatever it is. It's a fairly normal human desire to make your situation better. You see what I consider fairly oppressive governments around the world that are doing things with a populace now many decades. This isn't just something that's been going on for a short time, that are driving populations into very difficult situations. Are we headed for the event? Are these things, these major events that we're talking about today, is this leading to the mass reveal? Will we find this out? Or is it just everyone is, for lack of a better way to viewing from orbit, how placing the bets, how it all shakes out?
That's your, yeah. Uh, yeah, awful hard to say. I'm thinking that if we're being observed, like I actually think we are, that I think they'll just have at it. It's kind of like the universe really doesn't care about anything. Basically, in 100 billion years, there will be absolutely no life anywhere in the universe. So the way things are, mathematically speaking, um, what I'm getting at is, I think what Don said, I agree with that. I don't really think they care, but maybe there is part of them that do care. You mentioned about, maybe we're being observed by several races. Maybe we're offshoots of these several races of aliens, and planted around the world in different places or whatever. I mean, I know I'm going
All
way
right.
out
No,
there.
no, you're not. I'm going to take. If you think you're going way, I'm going to push you a little bit further. Let's get down to two parts. There is often a reptilian race, a mentioned race that's been talked about, that is of extraterrestrial nature, and they seem to have rather nefarious designs. And then I have heard the race that resembles the Nordic kind of features, much larger, that seem to be much more gregarious, or at least supportive to encounters with humans of this planet. Are we the test ground, the battleground? I don't see a lot of other races other than those that seem to follow into that more the Homo sapien kind of entity. And then of course you have that grays that fill in the middle of it, that seem to be both directions. They play not so nice encounters, as well as fairly benign encounters. So if we are some kind of a descendant, are we actually seeing something that is a greater conflict? Is this something that is greater than what happens on our planet? Do you think that that's what's occurring?
All fascinating. I mean, I don't know, what our influences are to be the way we are, and how we're actually judged and looked upon. And then, I come up with this question, and that is, if life is abundant everywhere, and why are we even being looked at? I mean, if there's life everywhere out there, then why are we special in any type of way? And we always tend to think of these things. This is the problem I think we have, as we're sitting around here and everybody's contemplating this topic. Who does? We always think in human terms, human ways.
We're egocentric.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned this last time we were on the show, but I do think that. So it's awful hard for us to really understand, what the big picture is, if there is even a big picture, and there could be, but things could be laid out that we didn't even know about, in front of us, and all some type of weird type of plan, or it could just be random chaos that means nothing. And so I tend to think it's probably more of the random chaos, but I don't know. I don't know. I think it's better if someone else took the question.
Well, no, it's not a quiz.
Yeah,
it's not a quiz.
Yeah.
And since the one that laughed the loudest, he's going to be the one that's going to get to handle it. We'll deflect it over to him. But I think you have a good insight to it, right? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. We, even in the absolute worst of situations, our egos tend to ride pretty high. We ultimately are going to always see it as, how does it affect me? And then the next circle out of, your significant others. And then, as that extends further out to your friends, and then your community, whatever. I think, I can't think of his last name. He writes great books, and one of his latest books is talking about the tribal kind of return that we're coming. And it's not tribes based strictly on ethnic backgrounds, but it's now becoming tribes of what you believe, tribes of where you work, tribes of where you are regionally, things that are being manufactured. We go forward. All I'm saying is you've brought it up. We've talked about it in the past. We talked about it, I think, when I was on your show a long time back. What if the whole outcome of this, and what if the whole reveal is what we're driving towards, that maybe world governments know about this? Maybe this is all coming to this apex because of the external agents that are part of it. They're not just observing, but they might be engaging. As to why we're unique, think about how we look at things in our own earth, our own universe, our own experience. How different parts of us, of our society, different individuals will just spend, a great amount of intellectual capital as well as personal time to study and understand small things. And sometimes all those little small things, when brought together, reveal something really significant. So I can understand why we might be more than just a curiosity. Because if we weren't, then I don't understand why you keep returning. And there's too much activity. Chris, to you, since you were laughing, I want you to jump in now.
All right. Well, I'm going to go out
to know what you're doing on your desk over there, Mr. DePerno. Share with us.
Oh, I'm drinking my coffee. I can't survive without 10 cups of coffee a day. So, anyways, I'm going to go out on the fringe here a little bit because there's a couple of things.
Any more of us getting out on the fringe, and the fringe branch is going to break.
Oh, this is going to break the fringe branch. Up. All right. So let's start with the grays. Okay. So people think the grays are sometimes the ones that are doing the nefarious things. They're, the abductions, they're hurting people during the abductions. They're taking eggs, they're taking sperm, they're doing this. They got scoop marks and stuff. All right. Let's say these grays are us. Let's say these grays are us from the future. Now, let's put evidence together. Dr. Masters has said that if we had a nuclear war, we would have to change. We would have to evolve. The human species would not be able to survive. We would have to change. So if we became something, now there's a theory that grays are plant life, that they absorb protein and everything through their skin rather than a digestive system. So if we evolved to be like grays, similar to grays or what we are, and we had to come back in time, because that's what Dr. Masters believes, that these are time travelers, and they're coming back to either recolonize the human race, to make it not plant life or not gray, and that's why hybrids could be made. Now, there's a theory.
Well, when Chris gets done, I've got to address the question of the so-called grays, because I have some very, very interesting thoughts on them, Chris.
Well, Don, I told you I was going to break the fringe branch, so I know that I'll be challenged on this theory, and that's okay. I don't have the answers on this, but these are theories that people have put out there. So what I'm saying is that if we were in trouble in the future and we were able to do time travel, which there's a theory that it can be done, and we came back to make hybrids, we came back to take samples and things in order to recolonize us or to make us what we are, that would kind of make sense. If we said, hey, we really screwed up this planet, we really screwed us up, we killed a lot of us, we destroyed the DNA of humanity, there's a way we can come back and do this. Now, do they make hybrids to be able to take a nuclear blast, to be able to survive in such a type of thing? I don't know. But anyways, that's my theory. Go ahead, Don. Chew me up.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. But, the grays have always been a conundrum wrapped up in an enigma. And let's take a look at the reports of what these little guys supposedly are. Apparently, they're totally asexual. Okay, they show no signs of sexuality. Their mouths have been described as being very, very small, no apparent teeth, things like that, and they're very robotic. Well, over the years looking at this, I've always finally come to the conclusion that I think they are nothing more than worker ants. They are some type of creation that were created to perform specific tasks. They are not the once all see all. They are the workers. They are directed. Okay. Now, a very interesting little anecdote about this. If you go back and you look at the Travis Walton account of what allegedly happened to him, okay, he was out with a woodcutting crew. They were trying to fulfill a contract. They encountered what appeared to be a UFO. Walton charged toward the UFO. He was allegedly struck by a beam of some type, knocked to the ground, apparently either comatose or dead. His buddies got terrified. They took off. They came back. He was gone. So was the UFO that they sighted. It was gone too. Now, Walton later said that he was brought back inside the craft. Now, whether he might have been inadvertently killed and was revived or just knocked unconscious, it's not clear. But when he woke up, he saw a bunch of these small gray critters around him. He became terrified, grabbed something off of a table next to him, and began swinging at these creatures. They became, according to his account, terrified, ran out, and then a couple of Nordic type entities entered.
Well, that blows my theory about the Nordics being on our side.
They entered, and they had him put this weapon down, this club or whatever it was he had grabbed, and led him out of the room. Well, okay. Now, if any of that is true, what would logic tell you? And I've thought about this a long time, and I've come to the conclusion that they are basically automatons, directed or programmed automatons. They are not an entity unto themselves.
Okay. And I don't disagree with that, Dan, but why are they doing what they're doing? Why is there a hybridization race being built? Why are they taking samples?
Well, that's assuming there is. Now, that's what Dr. Dave Jacobs has been maintaining for decades, okay? But it's not, certainly it's not impossible. Maybe it is. Maybe there is a blending of our DNA with other creatures. There are many people today that have been studying this for many, many years that believe that we, Homo sapiens sapiens, are a blending of early proto-human and ET DNA. There's no way to tell, but there is one thing to take a look at that is certainly telling. It's the dramatic increase in the size of the human brain that took place apparently in a cosmic eye blink. Now, there are some scientific peoples that will tell you that's because we began eating meat, which increased the size of the brain. Okay. And some other odds and ends thrown into the mix. But even today, okay, when our DNA strands have been examined to the nth degree, there's still a lot of material in there that we yet have no idea what it does. Is it truly junk material in the DNA, or perhaps there's a purpose for it down the road? These are all questions that are being explored now.
Well, let me ask this question: does anybody other than myself believe that time travel can be done?
I think it's
current-
possible. Absolutely.
Currently, you mean?
Not currently. Anytime.
Well, wait a minute. He's not. He's saying, is it one possible? Maybe some other people doing it. I don't think it's probably within our realm of capability.
Not now.
Not yet, but I think it's definitely possible.
And stuff. So,
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say yeah, and I think it could even be possible now.
right. So if we're all in agreement that we're on a road of destruction, and let's say that we do just destroy us in a large form, wouldn't it make sense? Either would ET help, just like Don was saying, with this, to try to recolonize us by taking sample, because they're taking samples. We know this. We've talked to hundreds and hundreds of abductees, and they've taken eggs and they've taken sperm, and if they developed a race, to replace us or whatever, some kind of colonization is going on. Whether it's now or in the future. Why would you take all this? If we're a petri dish and we're losing in that petri dish, why would you want to take samples of stuff and save it? I think there's a chance that ETs are probably saying they screw themselves this time. Maybe we can replenish the earth with these petries.
Maybe with a bit of a hybridization, we can get rid of kind of that tribal mentality, possibly. I don't know. If it's awful hard to say. Interesting.
Okay, so without putting anybody on the spot here, I tend to be one person that believes a universal force known as God in our culture that does have influence or design over the universe. I have no.
I agree with that.
Mind about that. I look back at different parts of our recorded history, especially in our mythology, and this is not to be the least bit disrespectful to any religious belief or practice. But a lot of the activities that go on in the best-selling book, otherwise known as the Bible, tend to have a lot of features to me that fit a lot of our discussions. Corrections, assistance, help, outright engagement to destroy evil, especially for those that wrote the version of that said book. Sorry is evil. I'm not uncomfortable to bring this up or an explanation, but are extraterrestrials the part of? Are they the agent of this recording that we have in various texts, religious and non-religious, that have been around for a long time? Martin,
Do you mind if I grab that real quick?
Oh,
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
let's
You start,
on
John.
that one. Sure.
Okay. Over my lifetime, all right, I have come to the inescapable conclusion that there is, without doubt, a universal energy, a universal spiritual field that many refer to as a God. Now, that being said, there's a big difference between that energy that permeates the universe and religion. Religion is and always has been, regardless of how you cut it, you slice it, you dice it, one thing. And that one thing is a control mechanism by those in charge with the herds of peoples around.
Yep.
Organized religion has caused more death on this planet
No
than
argument.
anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But
All we gotta
religion,
do-
religion's not God. Religion is a man-made, in this case, talking about our little blue sphere, is a man-made construct. So it is flawed. And I think if there's one thing all of us would agree with not a lot of effort, we are flawed creatures, which is what's recorded in the good book.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And all we have to do, look, I came from an area back on the East Coast where it had a plethora of small, independent Christian churches. Okay. And some of the stuff that was being espoused, for example, I can remember a guy I knew in high school. And one day we were between classes and there was a movie out. I can't for the life of me now remember what it was, but it was a big thing at the time. And I asked this guy, have you seen this movie? No.
Can you describe the movie?
Oh, hell, it could have been anything. It could have been
Debbie Does Dallas.
Yeah, I would think most religions would say Debbie Does Dallas not on the list to watch.
Well, it wasn't Debbie. It wasn't Debbie Does Dallas.
It was when I was a teenager.
That was the 70s, okay. But no, this was in the 60s. Well, anyway, regardless. And I said, well, are you going to go see it? No. Why? You know what goes on in movie theaters? Yeah, they play a movie. No, they turn the lights out. Yeah, and? Yeah, well, at any rate, the bottom line was he had been taught in his church that in movie theaters, people do nefarious things, probably of a sexual nature.
Oh, you're saying sort of Book of Genesis stuff.
Yeah.
After that reptile came by and passed out the apples.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Martin, we were able to decode this.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But
Guilty as charged, though.
That's the point. Playing cards is evil. Hell, in the Pentagon, there is a group known collectively as the Collins Elite that believe the entire UFO UAP thing is a demonic deception from the bowels of hell.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and we should leave it entirely alone. Not even look at it. Don't address it. Nothing. Well, that's kind of stupid, don't you think? You have a phenomenon. The phenomenon is somehow interacting with humanity.
Wait, Don. I'm familiar with the stuff with the Collins group, but I have to say this out loud quickly. You say, not you personally, the Collins group says this is demonic, and that means it's evil. Okay. But I thought, as all sworn believers of any of these major faiths, you're supposed to combat evil. Why would avoiding it somehow think that that's going to make the situation any better?
Oh, don't ask me,
all right,
Commander.
So you're not
I just ride the train. I don't design the schedule. Okay.
You don't get the newsletter, and you're not attending the meetings. All right, moving on.
I didn't even get the T-shirt.
That's a sure sign that you're not part of the group if you don't have the T-shirt.
Interesting.
All right, Martin, you must have something on this. Come on.
What were we talking about? No.
Well, I noticed everybody got glassy-eyed, especially Chris with the Debbie Does Dallas when I was trying to figure out what the movie is.
I had flashbacks when I was a teenager. I go, holy shit, how does he know about me? Yeah. I thought he was talking about me personally when the lights went on.
This is not the confession part of the show, Chris. So just hold on. You just go to mute it, Mike, and we'll be okay. We'll work it through.
Well, so you mentioned the demonic thing. I think that's a fascinating part, and it's kind of our brain kind of goes places quickly. Think about how we progressed over, the thousands of years, and how we can't explain something, so then it's God, or then it's magic, or
or
this
the
or that,
devil or whatever.
or
Sure.
the devil. Yeah, look at the Salem witch trials for one. I mean, all these things happen because they're unexplainable, and that might have been a mold, by the way, out of that made these girls act strange. But so I remember hearing, Lou Elizondo say that, someone above his pay grade had mentioned that they thought they were demonic, and that, and I think that's also a problem to, paint the brush and stroke in that direction, because, okay, well, that's going to block out a lot of people from even taking it serious and taking any, research into it at all, if you just pass it off as demonic,
Right.
I mean,
but I'm going to say, Martin, that using the word demonic and not able to explain it afterwards is much like what we were talking about earlier in the show about an unconditional love. When you use those words, people are falling into certain categories. Oh, this guy's, you're crazy. What you don't talk about unconditional love when you're against the wall of a possible battle or a conflict. That doesn't fit. You use the word demonic, immediately we're talking, for many people, demons, witchcraft, the devil, Satan, whatever words we want to use on that. It's the lack of explanation between it. It's the changing of language that goes on that is endless as part of any society. I don't care what era, what generation. Words do change. Their meanings do change. We always look back at people that Don was talking about, that because of religious tenets, not to do certain things based on, on that being it, or maybe just a society. And we look back because we're more learned now. We have exposure to more information. I used to bring this up on the show. In fact, I think all three of you at different times when we've talked on shows, I'm here to tell you, we have in our hands the ability to locate fact at a time that rivals what we saw on Star Trek. And for all of us present, Star Trek was the break of really, where technology and how it was going to accelerate us. And according to Google and most of the other online engines, more than 60% of us are in porn sites, which doesn't bode well for Debbie Does Dallas as the movie that was shouted out during Crossfire UAP as the possible movie that was throwing things off. But I digress a little bit. My point is, we maybe have more facts available to us, but we're also available to look at more non-fact, non-intelligent things. And we're attracted to that probably 2 to 1. You tell people you should eat good foods, but we're still consuming sugar. And we have groups of people that are stuffing sugar into our food because of subsidies and, what we've always done and keeping the economy going. I don't think anything we talk about when we talk about UAP, UFO is excluded from what we have going on in our society. And we're fooling ourselves that we're more advanced, that we're more capable because of what we have done with technology and where we're at. What say you,
definitely double-edged sword, definitely.
Absolutely, because and it goes back to that good book. And this is what happens when you take of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. We don't want to take the responsibility that goes along with knowledge. Because you can do something doesn't mean that you do something. But that is the price of living free, having freedom of choice. But we want to have the freedom of choice. We want to do what we want to do. And maybe that's why we're interesting to these other entities that visit us or are part of us, or we come back from the future to look at, because the people in the future can't believe they made it based on what they see happening in the past or what they know about the past.
Yeah.
All right. I want to shift to one thing before we kind of get into our wrap down. Good friend of all of us, Stan Gordon. He sends out a newsletter. Martin and I were talking a little bit about it earlier today by message. It wouldn't be Commander Cobra and Commander Cobra hosting this week. It wouldn't be Commander Cobra without bringing up the Black Triangle. He put out an interesting report of a black triangle that was seen hovering over a building. I always have available my little model. I don't know how well it shows up. This is the model that one of the other hosts on KGRA made as part of a series of models that he made. I am convinced that the black triangle phenomena is man-made, our technology. I think that we are working in drives and systems that make me believe that reverse engineering or breakouts from technologies that were maybe touched upon towards the end of World War II have been facilitated. I think this is how it explains the Tic Tac, although it doesn't follow that classic shape. And I wanted to ask thoughts on where is the group on reverse engineering, just pure breakthroughs, maybe some of the other activities that have gone on. Obviously, World War II, the term Foo Fighter, Chris brought it up earlier in the show. These are all events that seem to occur or have occurred or have a lot of basis in military conflicts, wars, military technology, and the things that we're confronting as a group of people. Chris, you look really composed and intellectual there with the hands folded. Now, of course, I brought attention to it, so he's.
Well, I will tell you, I agree with you that triangles, I believe we have triangles that are man-made. That I believe that these triangles are such that we've developed. Now, what I was told by a retired state director for MUFON, and he was a lieutenant colonel for the Army, and he was in charge of the Army's Future Weapons Lab. And he says, Chris, these triangles, we make them, but here's the difference. We have reverse engineered extraterrestrial triangles. I go, well, how do you know which is which? He says, you look at the triangle, and the ones that have the lights at the tips, at the three tips, are theirs. Ours have the lights at the bottom. And I was kind of stunned because first of all, why would you make up something like that? And second of all, that kind of, makes sense in some ways. He says those are the anti-gravity propulsion systems that light up those lights that they're there. We have developed them where they're underneath the triangle, and the extraterrestrials have them at the tips of the triangle. So this is a guy who extremely credible. I mean, he, like I said, he was in charge of the Army's Future Weapons Lab. He says they were playing with plasma back in the 80s. So I truly believe that you're right, Commander, that we do have reverse engineered, that these triangles, some of them are ours, and we've developed them from probably crashed triangles. As Bob Lazar says, there was a triangle down at S4. Now, before I end this, I just want to say something about this demonology thing and stuff. I have never heard of the Collins Group. I did hear Lou Elizondo say that there was a group of people who believe that this all is demonic in the Pentagon, and Don just enlightened me what that group was called, the Collins Group and stuff. But I also remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, there were military officers who said they were part of a satanic group, that there was satanic group within the military also. And I wonder if that has some bearing on why they think that some of this may be demonic. Because Kathleen Martin has always said, and when she talks about abductions and stuff, she's always said that if you evoke the name of Jesus, that they disappear. Not all the time, but at times they have disappeared. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, I don't think the satanic activities is very far off the mark. I think when the military is nothing more than a microcosm of whatever your society or culture is. I think that there's a lot of variance between what is just foolishness to true belief and and devotion to Satan. I mean, I think that that's all there. What you're alluding to and what this is coming to, and I want to get Martin and Don on the triangles, but since you brought this into play, I want to throw it into our discussion stream. Then this kind of leads me back to something that I always talk with Paul Eno, and I hear Paul is doing better. He's got some real challenges going on the medical side of it. He thanks the mass of people that have been supportive to him and his family, and our prayers and our continued support, please. One of the greats of our midst, for sure. But Paul spent a lot of time in his early life as a future priest before he decided not to follow that. And when he was very young in the acolyte world, was spending a lot of time with exorcists. And Paul helped me formulate, and I've discussed with him, how seems to be a lot of intersection with what goes on in what we would say paranormal or almost demonic kind of activities. Stan would be the first one to talk to you about how Bigfoot and other cryptids seem to show up when you have a UFO event. We have all these things that seem to intersect around it. We're talking about key parts of our military, and there is what many of us would term of good and bad, light and darkness, that is involved in the formation of that. What's your feeling of how all of these things intersect? That you have we've touched upon it from the start of the Tonight Show, the good and the bad, coming from different parts and entities. And on what I think what Don put out about what the grays represent makes a lot of sense. It fits in a lot of areas on reports of what's gone forward. Martin, you got your hand up.
Can you make that question more of a nutshell?
Do you think a lot of the phenomena that we talk about, obviously we're focused on the UAP because of what has gone on recently, but we always seem to delve into, I call it the unified field, that none of this is disconnected, that all of this has connective tissue or connections. Don was talking earlier about the DNA. Is that coding that's in our DNA, whatever triggered that event a few millennia back, that separated us, that we started to seek protein from different sources than just plant material, which also then led us into a competitive type of lifestyle where we found it easier sometimes to kill competitors than try to live cooperatively. And that seems to be how we've brought ourselves to the point we find ourselves today. To the different types of para-religious or paranormal activities, much that seems to surround what happens with UFO events. Do you feel that there's a strong unified field interconnectivity to all these events, and that you tend to focus on one? I remember talking to certain UFO people that if you brought up anything that could happen paranormal, their hand would be up. Not talking about that. It reminds me much of the science faculty at a university. The chemists are making fun of the physicists. The physicists are making fun of, people that are over in geology, and vice versa, all the way around in the circle. And yet everything that they study is connected based on atomic structures, chemical interactions, physical forces that go on. But they refuse to see that connection. Obviously, I tend to think it's connected. So that's the nutshell. Do you think it's connected? What are your thoughts on it?
Can I get a nutshell of the nutshell? No.
You want the meat of the nut? Is that what it is?
No. I think I do think there's a connection. Everything is like vibration. Everything is, when you look at quantum physics and string theory and all that, it gets so like mind boggling and things don't make any sense. And that's where I think, I don't think any of this really makes any sense. And it's just like, we're just here anyway. When you look, like at the hard surface of your table, and to realize that most of it is just empty space. If you go down to the, deep levels of it. So I do think, though, that everything is somehow connected. I think that, the old saying about for every action, there's a reaction. I think that it's all, through whatever it is. As far as us being possibly, hybrided or whatever, as species along the way. What Don said about the DNA, there's so much in there we don't understand. I think in general, that kind of goes without saying about everything. I think we only know a drop in an ocean. And, it's just, there's just so much we don't know. And I don't, I like the saying, I think Jacques Vallée maybe said it first. I don't know. But, maybe we wouldn't even understand if we knew.
Fair. I think that's a fair, I believe it is Mr. Vallée that says that it's a fair thing. Will we be able to comprehend it? The fact is, I don't think we are able to comprehend everything. Talk about our extra DNA, how little of our brain that we actually use. The physiological estimate of how little the brain is all of it is used is an interesting part. And I think that's maybe the big part of our evolution, is that as you get to use more of your brain, some of the things that we've talked about earlier are recognized. And that may be what is the big definitive feature for all of us. Don, right. What do you think? Unify, and I want to hear something from you on the black triangle.
Wait a minute. Before you go there, Don, I just want to interrupt. And Commander, is that a ham sandwich over your head? Because I'm really hungry and I keep looking at it. Just tell me, see it? Everyone else see that appearing up
the upper part of my screen?
Yeah, there's like
I have no idea what that is.
It looks like a ham sandwich and a hot dog. And
how did you get a ham sandwich, Martin?
Okay, maybe it's a hot dog.
Maybe you're hungry.
I think if this is a perfect proof of how everybody sees something and walks away with something else, and then someone says, "Oh, it's a hot dog flying."
Yeah, I'm going to
fill out. There are no pork products at this house because of taking on a pig as a pet, which I now love.
Oh, they're supposed to be smarter than dogs.
This incredible animal. He's got a bit of a personality disorder, but that's a different story for a different show for a different night.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
So I'm down to now just chicken, turkey, and fish and fowl.
So you're not grilling any
now it's my time. It's my turn, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I got a hell of a lot. Number one, we've got to go back to my early entree into this field. Initially, I was convinced the whole phenomenon was strictly nuts and bolts. But over the years, my thinking has evolved quite a bit on that. And I then took into consideration the possibility of an interdimensional entree into this reality by some of these beings. And finally, there's a third possibility I have not discounted, and that is the remnants of an early human Earth civilization that had the technology to leave the planet during a planetary disaster and then ultimately return. So that's where my thinking is as far as what the UFO UAP could be. Now, with that being said, we were talking about the Collins elite. We were talking about negative influences, or as they term, demonic. I go back to the very early days of the 1950s. And during that period of time, This nation and the Soviet Union were doing a lot of above ground atomic testing, setting off nukes willy-nilly, okay, in the pursuit of a finer, better way to kill your fellow human beings. Now, during that period of time, in the UFO field, back in those days, we called them flying saucers or flying discs, there was an anomaly that developed here in the United States called the contactee movement. And almost en masse, those people all claim to have had contact with the Space Brothers that were warning us against the use of nuclear weapons. And as a matter of fact, it got to such a point that even the FBI became very interested in this, thinking it may have been a communist plot, okay, to cause the United States to abandon its research into nuclear weapons. Well, what happens when you set off a nuke? You got a hell of a big bang, and it's believed that it may even reverberate through the dimensional barrier, okay? This may have been one of the reasons that there was such a strong resistance to the idea of nuclear weapons. Do I think that's conceivable? Absolutely. My God, the Russians set off a 50 megaton bomb in the early 60s, the largest nuclear device ever, and it was detonated above ground. Who knows what kind of havoc that caused, not only here on Earth, but also throughout interdimensional space and the cosmos at large. Now, with that being said, we're talking about triangles. Okay. Do you guys recall back in the very early 90s, around 91, 92, above the capital of NATO in Brussels, there was an incursion of UFOs, triangular craft, that appeared above the skies of Brussels, and it caused all kinds of havoc at the time. It made worldwide news. We sent jets up to intercept this thing, and it left them with ease, but it was flying around. I think, okay, it was the visitors' attempt to let us know they were there, they were alive, they were well, they were keeping an eye on things. Now, you talk about reverse engineering. We got to go back to the Thomas Wilson Eric Davis document memo, when Admiral Wilson, who at the time was the head of the DIA, got pulled into the UFO question and told certain people, among them Edgar Mitchell, that he would try to investigate this. And he ended up contacting an aviation corporation out here on the West Coast that allegedly had recovered UFO UAP technology that they were experimenting on. They wouldn't talk to him on the phone. He flew out to the coast. They took him to a secure vault. He asked them his questions. They pulled out their bigot list. They checked. His name was not there. And they told him, sorry, we can't tell you anything, which enraged him. He went back to the Pentagon, prepared to raise holy hell. But the bottom line was, somebody pulled him aside and warned him, look, Admiral, you don't want to do this. You're putting your pension, possibly a future star that you would receive when you're retired, at risk. Best if you just shut your mouth, which he ultimately did. Now, if in fact, and I believe there is, and I think all you gentlemen believe there is, if there is a genuine, true UFO UAP secret, it is a core secret that is enveloped by a special access program. that specifies under federal statute that you cannot even acknowledge that you know that there's a core secret or an SAP surrounding it. So the bottom line is mum is the word. So yeah, do I think that we have basically reverse engineered some of this technology and we're currently using it? Yeah, I think we are. As a matter of fact, I talked to a physicist friend of mine who believes it's entirely conceivable that we have even taken this technology into the solar system. Now, if that is true, then anything we see today, gentlemen, put another 50, 60 years of technological advance on it, and that may be where our cutting edge is that we're never going to see.
Chris?
Well, I just want to say that I think Don hit a good point that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is our stuff. And I think why the government pushes a lot of the UFO stuff is, I'm not saying there's not UFOs, but I'm saying that a lot of technology is out there that we're trying to hide and use disinformation. And I just got this letter from a friend of mine who was able to get this, and this is amazing. I want to show how the government and people in the government kind of twist things. Now, everybody knows Werner von Braun. We know that he was the head of the rocket thing. And one of the things that
a good former Nazi too, by the way.
Good former Nazi. And what he usually had said at one time, that when he says we were developing advanced technology, he had said that they had help. Now, when he got here, he started denying any of that. He didn't believe in UFOs. And one of the things he did send was a letter to a UFO thing. And let me read this to you. This is on stationery from U.S. Army Ordnance Missile Command, the Army Ballistic Missile Agency in Alabama. And it's sent to a Mr. Hayden Hughes, Associate Director of the Interplanetary Intelligence of Unidentified Flying Objects. Dear Mr. Hughes, this is an acknowledged receipt of your letter of August 10th, in which you asked for my personal thoughts regarding the question of unidentified flying objects. From the meager information I have concerning stories of so-called flying saucers, I would conclude that the stories concerning them are hypocritical. Any statements regarding the existence of inexplainable aerial phenomena are, in my opinion, purely in a realm of fantasy and should be thoroughly discounted inasmuch as there is no evidence to support such contentions. Other than venturing that, in my opinion, I could only add that I have never seen any such phenomenon and cannot believe in their existence until I do. I thank you for your letter. Signed, Werner von Braun, Director, Development Operations Division. Now that's a change from what he first started alluding to. And then when he's working for the U.S. government, he's now sending out letters like this. So going back to what Don was talking about disclosure, I don't think we're going to see it. I think this is all farce to lead us down a certain path. What that path is, I don't know. But that was an amazing letter that I just got.
Well, it alludes to me an interesting thing that brought up, and all three of you have spoke to it. So let's just say that the good doctor got the in brief. He's on the losing side. Some pretty horrendous activities were connected with him. You know, how directly he was involved, I don't know. So I won't speculate.
He was a Nazi. He was a bad person, but we used him.
Not only a Nazi, he was an SS colonel.
Right. He's a bad person, but we as Americans, we used him. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that we said we're going to take this guy, and even though he's a bad person, we're not going to put him on trial because of his knowledge and technology whereabouts.
Right. But my point I was going to drive to, it sure sounds like he got an in brief.
Oh, yeah. He was told to shut up.
This is how it's going to go forward. So, again, when I'm going to quote another German. It's been a long time since I used his quote. Bismarck. The more I find out of what goes into sausage and government, the less I like both.
It's true.
And I think that really does sum up the experience. Circling around here a little bit in this holding pattern, I think we're all touching upon the same things. And one of the reasons I wanted to kind of take the tack that I did, what we talk about here, although we're focused on the UAP, the phenomena, is going to be affected and is going to affect ENA, both words, by what is happening in the world around us. And I think we've all have touched upon that a lot in individual things that are going on with your own shows. Don's paper, I think, is a really important piece of work. I think it's a really well thought out because it shows what you talked about earlier, Don. Your not so much the evolving of your thought, but the development of your thoughts. What the early impressions are, and I think it alludes to both of you, Chris and Don, with your law enforcement background. You walk in and you look at something and you start to gather facts, but you start to draw. You draw some kind of a line where you think you go where this is going. The same thing happened to me in safety school, and they taught you when you checked a mishap, you're starting to make sure that everything is preserved and all your facts are preserved, and then you kind of draw a line and you try to put things together. You try to figure out how they fit, maybe how a craft hit the surface, and you're looking at the pattern to try to help you determine what led up to that point. And of course, Martin's approach has always been from his what I consider classical kind of press investigative reporter. You've always approached this kind of stuff from that bent.
Well, I'm an appraiser. I know that's you may not be able to draw a line, but when I'm doing, documents and looking for forgeries, and I have to. That's all part of our paintings. Guilty till proven innocent. When it's something important,
right?
Yeah, you have to investigate.
Yeah, I want Chris, Don. Did you notice because I blurred the background and I took the B2 away?
That's better. It's not a hot dog anymore.
Not distracted by flying hot dogs and other Rorschach tests that I'm putting in the background. And he's much more, he's much more affable with me.
All I know is that Martin's got me hungry now too. He kept mentioning food. Yeah. I'm dying. I can't wait till the show is over so I can go grab something to eat.
So I got something to say a little bit. We still have about 8 minutes or something.
Yeah, jump in there, Mark.
But when it comes to the reverse engineering, I do believe you're on to something. But when and I agree that there's probably both, because people have been talking about these triangles for like 100 years or something. And a friend of mine had a sighting in the 70s that was very much along the lines of similarities of these things. And so I do think that is very possible. The question I'd like to ask someone like you, Commander, is how is it possible that somehow this technology that we have this technology? It's a two-part question. How is it possible that it has not somehow leaked out? And the second part of the question is, do you think in the 2024 proposal, do you believe that when we're supposedly going to be investigating all these private entities that have to come forward with something related to UAP, if they have any of the technology, do you think if that technology is ours, that it's just going to be whoop, 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 we're not going to touch that, we're not going to go in that direction, and so let's somehow exclude these certain private entities?
Part one, there are things that I participated in such low scale. Don, I know, has the same thing in his background that I will take to my grave. I'm just simply not, I can't talk about it. I think these kinds of craft, whatever their engineering source is, whatever is the genesis to create it, has that level of security on it and the controls that were put in there that's going to prevent it from coming out. It's not on the internet. The ability to get to it, and as the good admiral who was told you're not on the list, is not on the list. So I think that there is a safeguard in there. That said, one of the things that really caught my attention in Stan's latest postings, and that's Stan Gordon for anybody who's joining the show late, in talking about this latest Black Triangle event in Pennsylvania, matches a drawing that was done by a friend of mine in the area here where I live in Maine. And he was very reluctant to talk more about it, but he happens to be an artist. He's a graphic artist, and he's quite good at freehand. He drew me what he had seen. He explained to me where he saw it. It happened to be near a major military-based engine manufacturer for the Department of Defense in the area. He described what he saw, described how it flew and what it did in the very brief time that he had seen it. Very, very close in description, very close to what Chris was talking about earlier in the show. I think these vehicles are prohibitively expensive and prohibitively dangerous to fly. I think what they provide is also so destabilizing to the entire circus that we call our exchange of this planet, what goes on. Meaning there are countless stories going back to technologies that would change how we are as people and alleviate great stress and the condition, lift everyone's boat. But there are, if the solution, what's the old one that was always talked about? People that made cars that ran on water, and they have been laughed out of any kind of real discussion. Even though you'll see those troubling little movies that will show up, and they'll show you kinds of stuff that it has gone forward, because that loss of control by petrochemicals would just be too upsetting to how money is being made, how it's going forward, where power is at. So Martin, I think the first part of that is we have to maintain status quo, and that change from status quo has to be slow, methodical, and people that have their hands on one set of levers are not going to allow for another set of levers to grab it. So it's just something that's not going to happen quickly.
Charlie Deuce, I got something here before the end of the show. If I have a moment, I can give this little anecdote.
Jump in the anecdote, because I want to close the horn, and we got to close the show out. So
back in the early 90s, we at UFO Magazine had a colleague by the name of Lee Graham, who was a technician working at Aerojet Corporation. Now, Graham was rather infamous at the Pentagon because he was one of those guys bound and determined to get to the heart of the UFO matter and literally snowed them under with FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act requests. Now, at the time, there was a experimental craft that was top secret that ended up being the F-117 stealth aircraft. Now, Graham, somewhere along the line, came up with the code word senior citizen. And he had sent a number of FOIAs to the Department of Defense, the Air Force, the Pentagon on this. Well, one day, 3 guys showed up at Aerojet with Lee. They went to his security supervisor, requested that he be brought into a room, and in violation of Aerojet policies, they asked his security man to leave the room. They had a briefcase. They opened it up. They told Graham, who had a secret clearance, not a top secret clearance, to sign some documents, and they would then validate his request about this senior citizen. Well, he signed a document that stated that he was being shown information he was not qualified to see, but they were going to show him anyway. And they exposed the F-117. Now, this was just before the F-117 was acknowledged publicly.
Right.
Okay. Now, these three guys ended up being one man by the name of General Michael C. Kirby, United States Air Force. The other two were FBI agents. He signed the documents. He was shown this TS&C information, and then they turned around literally, and we reported all of this in UFO Magazine. They turned around and tried to get him fired from Aerojet to get rid of him, okay, because he saw top secret information he wasn't cleared to see. They played a little game with him. Now, I got to tell you, that's not a long, far stretch from also being able to assassinate somebody if, in fact, they were a quote-unquote threat to national security. My point is, these sons of bitches will play dirty baseball.
At the end of the show, Chris, Martin, Don, thank you so much once again for accommodating changes in your times and schedules to accommodate my silly schedule. I am not meeting with any generals, admirals, FBI agents. I'm much further down the totem pole. But remember, down that low part of the totem pole, I'm carrying the weight of all those big heads above me. Also, if you take a quick look at my hat, it is of DDG 116. That is the ship of the Hudner. And on it is a quote, above all others. Tom Hudner, Medal of Honor winner, good friend of mine. Before he passed away, he is the subject in the movie Devotion and the great book by Adam Marcos, if you haven't seen it. But I thought starting out with Martin's comments about unconditional love above all others was a great way to close this show out. He crash landed his plane alongside his flight lead in Korea, which Don had brought up earlier in the show, to try to save his life and get him out of the plane. He was unable to. It's an incredible story about his journey back from that by the Chosun Reservoir. To KGRA and the greatest audience on the planet, this has been Crossfire UAP, which will return to its normal name, UAP Crossfire. Thank you.
Crossfire. Yeah.
It'll be UAP Crossfire the next time we return. I think it's supposed to, as you can see in the creative meeting, Commander Cobra lost when he wanted Crossfire UAP. But since you let me host this week and you absolutely shotgunned me into this role this week, you had Crossfire UAP. This will be a collector's item.
I mean, I did the podcast UFO because I have the same type of thinking.
There you go.
I go backwards. Yeah.
Gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to see you. Godspeed, God bless. And as I tried to end all my other shows when I was back on the air, Godspeed to all that surpasses all knowledge and understanding. Till the next time, Crossfire UAP or UAP Crossfire, whichever church you go to.
Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.